Welcome back to Shit Creek Survivors, where we share stories of resilience and tools for resilience. My name's Cameron. I'm joined by my co-host Dennis today, and we're having a powerful conversation with Blair Sorrel, who's going to share her journey with Schizoid Personality Disorder, SPD, after being diagnosed at age 33. We're going to dive into the heavy realities of SPD and childhood trauma, and how tools like music and volunteering became Blair's path towards healing. If you're navigating mental health right now or know someone who is, this episode brings the hope and perspective you need. Let's get into it. I'm very excited to meet you. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're most
And
welcome.
Blair, if you want to just kind of introduce yourself, we would love to hear about you, where you come from, and then we'll kind of get into your story and how it grew and all that kind of good stuff.
Well, it's self-evident, but I'm a Smith College graduate
Mm-hmm.
who was eligible for disability. So you have to wonder what happened.
Right.
And it had nothing to do with my college or my upbringing or any of the gifts in life. It had to do with poor parenting.
Okay.
And the reason that I wrote this book is because when I first went into treatment, I learned that this condition, schizoid personality disorder, accounts for very high levels of homelessness. I was told that by my clinician at the outset, and you can look on Wikipedia under schizoid personality, and you will see that 65% of a New York City drop-in shelter were schizoid, and
Oh,
that's
wow.
just those people who presented. Schizoids are patterned to avoid contact. So worst
Okay.
case scenario could be homelessness, but it could also mean they can't work.
Okay.
Whatever went on in some of these other people's lives, the bottom line is they could make a bottom line. They could
Mm-hmm.
work. I don't think
Right.
most parents will want to become benefactors lifelong of their children
Right.
and foster this kind of dependency. When I
Mm-hmm.
went for jobs, they didn't understand why I couldn't work. I didn't understand why I couldn't work. Because what
Mm-hmm.
happened to me by the time I was 5 years old was that I was, quote unquote, forced into withdrawal. It's a defense I learned from too much criticism, disparagement, negativity. I tuned out. As
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you know, on a casual basis, there are people that you tune out. But if you do that as a child and you learn that maladaptation, it will carry
Mm-hmm.
over to school and then to employment. And if you can't focus, and if you're chronically tardy and seem to be in your own world, you're not going to last very long. So what
Okay.
I did was I took what seemed like the worst possible thing and tried to turn it into something good because I wanted to prevent this on other people and break the cycle. I
Awesome.
also wanted parents to be able to see the symptoms and to consider, please, a more balanced approach to
Mm-hmm.
raising their children because it's a defense. It's not a
Okay.
mental illness. It's a maladaptation. You may remember that shooter in Pittsburgh, the Tree of Life Synagogue back in 2018. He was thought to
That's
be schizophrenic. Park Dietz, who was Jeffrey Dahmer's psychiatrist, said, no, he's schizoid.
uh,
Um, that would be like a worst case scenario. Generally speaking, schizoids are nonviolent. It's more dangerous to them because, as I mentioned, they may not be able to work. And you can imagine life's dangers if you never went to a doctor or preventative
mm-hmm.
screening or sought expertise in any area because you were too afraid to deal with people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it can be very self-victimizing aside from unemployment. It can cause, you to have premature mortality. Not every schizoid is impaired, however, but if they are, they're not going to be able to function or function very well. And when I lived in New York, of course, everybody's expendable. There's no job security there. So the whole thing was a nightmare for me. The
Right.
employers
Yeah.
didn't understand why I couldn't do the work effectively, and I most certainly did not understand. But what I'm
Yeah.
trying to do is tap into how this happens out of
Yeah.
public service because I
That's
don't want other
amazing.
people to live this life. And, parents can become lifeline benefactors. I know one schizoid with an MBA who's
Hmm.
living at home, couldn't manage the family's house expenses, never sought intervention, a financial planner, any agency, and is
Hmm.
now in a homeless shelter. He's destitute in
Oh,
spite of an
wow.
MBA. Adult Protective Services became his guardian. This is an
Wow.
educated person who's clearly has some intellectual ability,
Hmm.
but you can be a genius, but if you're too afraid to deal with people, you can imagine how that sabotages your life. Aside from which,
Yeah.
I think that man is meant to be social and there's more potential for
Yeah, we're
happiness.
communal creatures.
I'm sorry?
We're communal creatures. We're meant to. We're built to
Well,
interact with each other and be around people.
yeah,
That's what's normal. That's our purpose
right.
normally.
Well,
And the other outside influences is what
definitely,
affected,
there's
and
only so much
we call it
autonomy
adaptation. Yeah,
that, so you can see with the ramifications besides homelessness, which is a fast track to mortality, you can see on a day to day. You wouldn't want a child that doesn't have friends, that never dates, that never lives in his or her childhood room.
Right.
40 years from now, do you want to be supporting your kids?
right.
Right.
You may not be able to afford to do that either, and the kids may be so um, out of it that they may not be able to ask for the kind of intervention they need.
Right.
So it does have ramifications. There was no reason in the world why my life or his life should have played out that way. Those are the only cases that I know of, certain documented cases. And there are schizoids who can function. It really depends upon how many people are around. The more people, the more impaired they're likely to be. But not every schizoid is impaired. What I'm just prevailing in is for parents to be more patient, more balanced, and,
Hmm.
and to have and raise better adjusted children. And this isn't a matter of whether those kids date and marry or become CEO, because most people just manage. You have a
Yeah.
menial job, you still have to be able to focus and get there on time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So,
Just carry on in life.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's a painful thing to live with, and it's potentially a dangerous one.
Yeah.
If you never
Yeah.
seek, you're not going to imagine just never seeking any kind of intervention. And that was his case because
Yeah.
he was too frightened.
Wow.
Yeah.
And nobody, I guess nobody who's in that situation really understands it either. You know what I
Right,
mean?
because their normal balance is kind of shifted off a little bit from where it should be.
Right.
So
Well,
they think
there's
they're
no,
living what life is, when really talking about it and getting intervention, they can maybe recenter.
if he can't, he could have had people who could have helped him. When
Yeah.
his
Okay.
parents passed, he lived lifelong in his parents' home. He was a data entry person, and that was
Okay.
beneath his capabilities, but he functioned all right in that job because it was isolated.
Mhm.
When I
Hmm.
met him, he was 40 years old as an MBA, making 20 a year, so I wondered about it. Then I
Hmm.
called and the mother answered. And he would never talk to me, his closest friend, about his financial troubles, or I would have helped him with it.
Right.
So it's a very sad scenario. Plus, we
And you
know
you
that
said
I'm sorry.
you were saying it's fear that causes someone to kind of keep that to themselves. Is it like the topic of finance that
It's a
kind of like
phobia. It's
it's
a
a
phobia.
phobia?
You're too
Okay.
afraid of dealing with people, so you'll deal with them in as minimal way or not deal with them.
Yeah.
And
Does
there are
that
a number of areas, especially as you age. Medically, you need to go,
Mhm.
you should go for preventative screenings or doctor at least once a year. What if you never did that?
right?
Or like
Wow.
him, not seeking his entire situation was preventable. Had he been more normal and opened up to people and gotten the help he needed, recognizing that he couldn't manage, he didn't. And people in his Westchester community called because they were concerned It was a very familiar scenario to Adult Protective Services. They ended up moving him out of his parents' home into assisted living, and he was destitute. He was posting on Facebook that they were living at poverty level. I mean, this is somebody with an MBA. My father
Mhm.
had to help me, a Smith College graduate, because all I could do was volunteer. I would go to these offices, and they didn't understand why I couldn't do the work, and they had high
Mhm.
expectations of me.
Yeah.
So it's
And
serious.
absolutely. And something that stood out to me, Blair, is you didn't actually get diagnosed till you were about 33.
Right.
And so prior to that, if I may ask, did you
Sure.
feel like something was different? Like, were you seeking kind of like understanding, why do I kind of like feel different? Or was there any awareness, or is it just kind of like you assumed that everyone was working with the same operating system? Or how did that work leading up?
Well, throughout my life, I felt I was different. You almost feel like you're looking through glass or that
Okay.
you're conducting a field study. It's not your life. Even the book, it's been commented that there was a sort of neutral tone to my experiences, whether
Really?
joyous or tragic. Um,
Yeah.
y- People said that, I wasn't all there, out of touch. I lived in an imaginary world. I was in an office where they were actually interviewing for my receptionist position in front of me. And I heard the
Uh,
office manager say, "This time hire somebody with a head on her shoulders." Well, you know that
uh,
people strike at something they don't understand.
right.
Aside from the most palpable that I could never really get there on time, it didn't matter when if the job started at 9, I was there at 9:15. Whatever the hours were, if you have a phobia, you're going to avoid contact. And it was
Hmm.
a defense I learned to go into fantasy rather than being in the situation. I mean, normal people look at situations 50% acceptance and rejection. The bottom line is they have more ego than people with this disorder. They don't anticipate harmful or
Okay.
malicious. There may be malicious, but there are also kind people where they
Yeah.
go, so.
Yeah. And when you finally got your diagnosis, what did that feel like to you?
It felt like a lowdown on a terminal illness because the clinician said it could take years to unravel
Yeah.
this. I was already 33 years old, and as with anything else, the sooner the better, and that's another reason I wrote this, so that if people,
Yeah.
parents or teachers or guidance counselors saw the symptomology. I was at Smith, and I had a psychology professor who commented that I missed a lot, but he didn't connect the dots.
Mm,
And it would be hard for people to diagnose because it's an unfamiliar condition. It's unfamiliar because the symptoms of avoiding contact means that if somebody's blocked from intimacy, they're not going to run to a clinician's office.
Yeah.
They're going to
yeah.
avoid that person as well.
Well, and if somebody's just tardy to work, you would probably think they just were uninterested in the job. You wouldn't think that they had a diagnosis that was needed to be sought out or symptomology to look for. You would think they just were lackadaisical, lazy, or didn't care.
Right.
But when you got your diagnosis, didn't you feel like some sort of relief, like a little bit of a weight lifted in some regards? Like, okay, maybe it's this and not just that I'm abnormal.
Well, I kind of felt like a sort of high because I didn't have any identity. I wasn't a writer. I wasn't any kind of professional. I wasn't anything except a loser. Now I was a
Oh,
loser with a distinction. It gave me I was schizoid. And
And
Emily
that's it.
oh,
Dickinson was schizoid. So I was in good company. If I was going to
Yeah.
become a writer, there you go. So I felt like it also gave me kind of, I don't want to come home for the holidays because I'm schizoid. I was off the hook. Go read what
yeah.
that means online and, don't ask me again. It was a way, I was like calling it in with my SPD. I now had a certain set of credentials. I'm not a JD, an MD, I'm an SPD, if that means anything
Yeah.
to anyone. So, yeah, that was a kind of cachet for a while. A clinician asked me or said to me, "Well, you saw what SPD is like to live with." I did. Now make that a merciful bullet in the back of my head in my sleep. It means I end up looking for everything again. I end up redoing everything. I end up, if my glasses are on my head, I forget they're there. You're always a little punch drunk. Depending upon your level of anxiety, I want to be clear that not every schizoid is impaired. But it's a drag. It's painful. It can be
Yeah.
life-threatening. Try to envision navigating New York City punch drunk with the homeless and the migrants and the buses and cabs and speeding by. You can wind up dead,
Yeah.
just from living with this. You're not all
Sensory
there. You're not
overload.
going to be anywhere very long.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
So sensory overload has some to do with it. It's just like too much going on and you almost have to seek solace, like isolation.
well, they would do that preferably. You can read on Quora and Reddit, Schizoids do post. There's some of them who spend the entire weekend watching TV or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I actually decided to volunteer because I felt that would be a good way for me to acclimate to other people and put my
Yeah.
own problems in perspective.
Yeah.
And, rather than moping around an apartment with my cats, that helped me a lot. And then from the volunteering, I was trained as a copywriter. Of course, I never want to show my copywriting book to anybody. But I had that training and I was able to use it to write a column called The Dollar Wise Dilettante. And I found a lot of cultural and retail offerings for free or low cost for people who were struggling or retirees or whatever. And I did that for 7 years. So I was able to use that voluntary. And I always encourage people to volunteer. I think it's
Yeah.
wonderful for all involved and will help a
Yeah.
lot. Then again, I would get to the voluntary places late and I was still probably in fantasy, but they're going to be more tolerant. It's always very different if people are paying you. The demands are going to be greater.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, there's something in here that in every story, there's this moment, it seems, where someone like you found out, okay, I have this diagnosis. And instead of running from it, you're like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to lean into this. I'm going to learn about it and I'm going to teach the next person. What do you remember that moment where you were like, you know what? I'm going to use this for good. I am going to put this out into the world so someone else is not alone.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I was with Jared and Elvin, who are in my book, my childhood friends. And we were having lunch, their annual visit, and they said again, and I've heard this over the years, that, I should write a book, or it would be a shame if I came and went and didn't use my writing. And then I just said in a reflective moment, I was thinking of writing about SPD. I had struggled with this my entire life. And they said, of course, say what? They never heard about it. So I had to go through the whole shtick again, what this
Yeah.
is, and,
Yeah.
and Elvin was so moved, he called Smith College about
Oh,
this.
wow.
Then the pandemic set, and of course, social distancing came naturally. I agree
Yeah.
with no adjustment on my
Yeah.
end.
Right.
But it gave
Yeah.
me a window of opportunity, and I had been watching Readsy tutorials in nonfiction, and the British author Harry Friedman presented, and I wrote to him, and I told him that I had this condition, and as Teilhard de Chardin, the Jesuit philosopher, said, the trick in life is to take anything bad and turn it into something good, and that I wanted to
Uh,
write about. And what do you think? Is this an article or book? So I started doing my cocktail napkin crude outline of what I had in mind. And he said, you have way too much stuff. He saw it as a book.
uh,
I had taken writing courses in New York. Of course, I was always the last to write, the last to present. I was like, Walter Mitty when it came to presenting, like this mousy woman, too fearful that, anything that went on at home carried over to other situations, that they were going to clobber me for some
right.
reason.
Yeah.
So the thought of writing 40,000 words, which is a minimum if you want to get published, was a bit daunting. So we broke it down and I wrote a chapter a month. during the pandemic. And it was fun because I kind of got to watch old movies. Certainly listening to classic rock was ideal all that
Yeah.
time. And it began to, I had a lot to say. I knew I had a lot to say, and I felt it was the right thing to do with the wrong life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's perfect. And I know that, and you just mentioned music. I hear that music has been very therapeutic to you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
how so?
Well, music really does soothe the savage beast. The music was so great of that era. I think we all
Mm,
agree, no matter which groups or songs are your preference. In the book, the songs are emotional proxy because they communicate what I can't really articulate. And I
Right.
okay.
connected with them in a way that I couldn't connect with people. Um,
Yeah.
the icons are in there, and they're very vulnerable and relatable. You have John Lennon's mediocre report cards. John Lennon was thought to have dyslexia, although it was never formally assessed. And he
Mm,
wasn't into school, so I felt that gave hope to all of those out there who were never going to graduate as merit scholars. Then you've
right.
had Jim Morrison's also had an estrangement from his family, and that his father, Rear Admiral George Stephen Morrison, didn't get him either. You know, my father would
Mm,
tell me to forget the literary thing. Admiral Morrison would write to him that he had no talent and to forget being with a rock group. I mean, you can see this online that he told him to give it up.
yeah.
Any connection with the band or for what he considered to be a complete lack of talent. So that was there, and
Thanks,
I thought, well,
Dad.
yeah,
yeah.
I thought, well, he didn't get him either. So
Yeah.
there you have it.
Right. Yeah.
So, um, yeah, I mean, that's the way they're presented. Um, It was just when I was writing a vignette, a song would come to me. And I'm even told by people who read this, and I've seen this on AI, that there's a kind of musicality to the prose that's syncopated. There are refrains. It has a certain rhythm to it. And I'm
Oh,
not
cool.
conscious, but it's felt that the music that I listened to and I really loved influenced the way I write.
That's
Um,
really cool.
Isn't that everybody has a
Yeah.
soundtrack to their lives, and I created a template so you can tell which song and which memory it triggers.
Mm,
That's
Okay.
there, and those are actual Jimi Hendrix photographs I got. There's a playlist. You know, this is if you're a classic rock lover. Forget
yeah.
SPD, but if you like,
Yeah.
you know, this sort of thing. I mean, it was reviewed by one rock site. I had, I guess, fun writing it. Um, the reception generally has been pretty good, but what's more important to me is that it helps people of any
Hmm.
difference, and that people who are more normal should recognize that people who are quote unquote different are in pain. It's hard to live
Mm,
with this stuff. No day
yeah.
is our day as far as it
Right.
goes. You know, to
And
try to be a
no.
little bit more compassionate or tolerant.
Yeah.
Of course, I'd love to break the cycle of SPD altogether. I think that would be the greatest achievement, but I don't pin hopes on that. But I do hope that parents will take a more balanced approach and
Hmm.
consider that words, and you may have experienced it yourself, that something that was said to you as a child stung and
Mhm.
caused lifelong self doubt, that you
Yeah.
could force your kid into withdrawal, which is in
Yeah.
psychological language for retreating into fantasy, which is the defense I learned.
And
Yeah.
we just had a guest talking about this. Like, you're conditioned at an early age not to feel some negative emotions. Like when you start crying, it's don't cry. When maybe you should be more like, go ahead and cry for a little bit, talk about why you're sad, address the emotions, and then let's get through it and start being, how we can solve that problem instead of just stop crying, stop crying. Don't feel the
Yeah.
negative emotions. So we've kind of been conditioned as kids, and it carries on into adulthood too.
Yeah.
I also wanted to say real quick, we talk a lot about feelings are connected to frequencies, and there's something called the authenticity frequency. And I won't get too far into it, but I think that music, when you really connect with somebody singing a certain song and the musicality of it, it's hitting those authenticity frequencies, and that's why it's really addressing you and your soul.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because the book was written on the reminiscence bump. That's your teens to early 20s when your musical memories are most vivid. And I didn't do that consciously. I just started wondering,
Mhm.
why I could recall that more readily than other periods of my life and started to read about autobiographical memory. And that's on the website, Rocking Tributes. But you have to have something that helps you connect emotionally, and if it isn't other people, it was a way for me to connect with people
Mhm.
Mhm.
without articulating because I couldn't have that kind of intimacy. I was blocked. And
That
the
makes
only
sense.
reason that I could get myself to a therapist is things down spiraled so much. And that's usually how SPD is diagnosed. People don't go in thinking because they haven't heard of the condition, they may be depressed or anxious or have some comorbidity that brings them to a clinician. And what's really sad is if they did go to a clinician, they would be spared a lot of trauma,
Mm.
possibly
So
their lives.
so the way you got into therapy was actually in a response to negative things were happening, and you were like, "I need to seek outside help," which must have
Yeah.
been very, very hard for you. Um, did you start that by maybe asking, like, a friend, like, initially? Like, "What would you do here?" Or how did you so that other people in your situation are in this moment, they're like, "I know I need help. I'm too scared to ask for help." What would you say to that person?
I would say don't perceive the clinician or therapist as the bad guy or gal.
Yeah.
There may be things that they reveal or say that are painful, but
Mhm.
they're not there to harm you. You will be far more helped than harmed from the
Yeah.
experience. It could
Mhm.
be catastrophic. You could end up homeless if you can't work. It
Yeah.
could be like this man who's in the homeless shelter in spite of all the advantages he had, an upper middle class background, MBA, if you can't
Mhm.
work.
Right.
There are it could be life-threatening as you get older if you don't go to a doctor.
Yeah.
Things as basic as that. But a clinician would also say there's just much greater potential for happiness and that man is meant to be social. And
Mhm.
there are enough studies, as you know, that if people are even have one daily conversation, that can prolong their lives.
Yeah. We've talked about that. 8 minutes, just 8 minutes talking
Yeah,
to somebody doesn't
yeah,
even have to be about what's bothering you, can actually relieve that within you.
right.
Um, and Blair, it it's easy to talk about when because you were saying earlier, like, understand that someone going through this, it's painful. I also wanted to put in there, there's no days off. There are no days off. There are no like moments of relief where you're like, oh, I'm normal. And then it goes back into it. It's like it's a constant state, right? Like it's
Right,
something that you're
right,
dealing with on a continuous basis. And people
right.
need to understand that. I think a lot of the times, and I think I've been guilty of it in the past, but we've looked at other people's situations and projected ourselves into it and be like, if that were me, that wouldn't happen. I would do one, two, three, but you're not fully aware of what's going on in that scenario. You're not operating with the mentality you have right now that could you think you could work your way out of. Like you're in a wholly, totally different situation where, especially you, were having to seek understanding in a place where, there wasn't a lot of diagnosis, there wasn't a lot of talking about it. So it must have been just very tough for you at the beginning. And I think it's just awesome that you were able to push and keep going. And what a testament to pushing through.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, I don't feel in doing any of this, I've done anything extraordinary. I just feel it's the right thing to do because
I love it.
But
I
that
don't
is
want people to
extraordinary.
live the life I lived. And I
Yeah.
don't want the homeless issue is complex. This is just
Yeah.
one of many reasons people become homeless, but that
Hmm.
could be a reality. And it's the appropriate way of looking at this that for both the parents, it's a double whammy for a parent and a child.
Hmm.
having this condition. Do you want
Yeah.
stunted kids? Do you want kids who are, let's face it, most people will underachieve. I'm not even considering that. I just mean that they can manage at anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most, the marital failure rate, okay, so they don't marry, but I'm really more concerned that they're able to self-support and not
Yeah.
become like this guy with an MBA in a homeless shelter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
another thing you're saying is that I think a lot of times people look at homeless people and they're like, "Oh, that wouldn't happen to me." Kind of like what I was saying before. That wouldn't happen to me. No way. When Dennis and I were police officers, we would run into homeless people, and they weren't doing it like for fun. You know what I mean? It was something that, like, it was a situation they usually ended up in, and you could tell initially on contact. There may be something going on with like a mental disorder, and then there also addiction comes into play too, because someone, who finds something that's giving them relief, although it may be dangerous in long-term use, if it's giving you relief for a little bit, you're more than happy. I've been sober 8 hours, or I said 8 hours, 8 years from alcohol. And I didn't think I could live without it, because it was what got me calm. It was what was working to me. And anyone who got between me and that was like, you're getting in between me and my medicine. So it can become very complex, and then people don't understand what you're thinking. And that's just me having PTSD after being shot. I mean, a whole lifetime of trying to sort things out. That's it must be very confusing and very, very overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, you were self-medicating, and that's
Yeah.
Exactly.
understandable. That's really
Yeah.
I hear these disparaging remarks that the homeless don't wanna work. Frankly, they could shower, wear a three-piece suit, go to a job, and it's not gonna work.
Right.
Somebody with this condition, depending upon their level of anxiety, can't work. They can't
Right.
concentrate, they can't do the work.
Right.
When I went for interviews when I opened my trap, they had high expectations of me. Then
Hmm.
on the exit interview, we would discuss this. I mean, I can laugh about it now because they went. I mean, it all headed in the same direction, whether it was a day, an hour, 3 years. Why couldn't I focus? I was in one
Yeah.
pet store and the guy hovered above me. At the cash
Yeah.
register, forget it. I couldn't.
Really.
Yeah, I mean, that's how impaired I was. They
Hmm.
simply don't understand, and schizoids are in pain. I think people have difference no matter what the disorder, but people who are neurotypical do tend to strike at something they don't understand, I think out of misapprehension and as a way of elevating themselves. Or look at them. They're dirty,
Yeah.
they're sleeping outside. Nobody chooses that lifestyle.
Right.
It's a terrible. I live in a
Yes.
community where there are high levels of homelessness and poverty. People have frozen to death in certain conditions because the cold-hearted mayor ousted them from the bus shelter. Nobody chooses to live like that.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you don't know what's gone on in somebody's life, like that poor woman, Debrina Kawam, in New York, who was immolated in the subway. She was from
Hmm.
Toms River, and her classmates said they saw her as a woman who could have everything. How did she end up living in the subway? She developed an alcohol addiction, and
Uh,
that ended horrifically. But she shouldn't
hmm.
be blamed for sleeping in the subway. She may have had no other option. It may have been,
Right.
in her perception, the safest place for her because it was a 20-degree night. I've given money to people here to buy propane. I'm
Hmm.
better off than they are. They're not going to write a book. You know, um, it's it's a hard thing, but I really wish people would act more compassionately toward one another, more tolerantly, and that's what I also wanted to say. Whether a schizoid or bipolar or borderline,
Mm.
people don't choose to live with these disorders. Their lives are harsh.
Right.
There are a lot of things that people who are more mainstream take for granted. It isn't
Hmm.
given to them that they're going to be able to function throughout a day without some kind of episode, without. So, that's what I
Right.
hope, just greater tolerance too.
Yeah. And what would you say to the person who's suffering right now? And I know I asked you a question sort of parallel to that earlier, but to the person who is self-isolating right now, who feels overwhelmed and scared, who's now hearing someone who pushed against that and went out there and, is helping other people in the same scenario. What would what's the golden nugget you would give to that person to
Well,
get to tomorrow?
the bottom line is, can you work?
Hmm.
Is there a pattern here of dismissals or firings? Are you hearing the same thing, that you're not listening? You can't focus. You're always
Right.
late. They don't understand what you're talking about. You may not be coherent. You can't
Right.
make eye contact. Primarily, are you able to manage? Are
Right.
and don't assume it's going to get better, because it won't. Remember my exit interview at Working Woman magazine, and Jim Horton saying to me, and it was because other people had said to him, the perception was that I was either extremely sharp or I was in a fog. And he suggested I find appropriate work for myself. It isn't a matter of that. As long as you have this disorder, this is the way it's going to play out, no matter what it is. Learning to play
Okay.
golf, you know, read tarot cards, take a course of some kind, as long as you have this, because your focus isn't there.
Mm, okay.
So,
So
and it can be, I'm sure, improved with cognitive therapy and the right kind of drugs. But I would also suggest volunteering and doing things the homespun way.
yeah.
If you're more focused on other people in a way that isn't daunting, you'll be less focused on your own pain or fear or whatever it is that's going through your
Yeah.
mind. They're not
There
there
you
to
go.
harm you.
Right.
That,
Right.
that's some good advice there. Yeah. Go ahead and try to be outspoken and go help somebody and talk to somebody about what you're going through, and it'll
I think
put
that's
a little less
extremely
attention on yourself.
Yeah, I think the less you self-absorb, the more likely you're gonna be to heal, actually,
Oh, that's
because the
beautiful.
hallmark of this is excessive self-absorption. But I think that's true of a lot of if you can't hold a job, then go and volunteer, make yourself of service, help someone. And now you can do a lot of things remotely. If you have too much trepidation about going into an office, and frankly, I was advised not to go into an office with this and to get help with concentration, then work remotely. Do
Yeah.
something. Do something that takes you away from your focus on yourself and your
Yeah.
problems and your fear. You'll free
Yeah.
yourself from fear.
It's almost like exposure therapy. We've talked about that before, but I had an issue with heights after I got shot, and
Well,
so
sorry.
we went to we were in London, so we went to the top of the Shard, which is the tall building in London, and then more recently, a couple of months ago, I was in New York, and we went to the top of the Empire State Building, and I was able to do that. It's really weird. Once you face a fear, sometimes it just like nullifies it. Now it might come back and you might have to do it again, but it really seems to have worked. It's kind of scary. So yeah, exposure therapy, the old school way, getting into it, just do it anyways. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's tough. But
Well,
well,
like we
Blair,
say all the time on this program, the blueprint is pretty easy. Just, do good things or have good thoughts. Like, I want to build muscle, go to the gym. The blueprints are easy. The hard part is doing the work, making the step, taking the step, getting gym membership, walking outside, talking to somebody, volunteering, putting pen to paper and writing a book, whatever
mhm,
it is. But you just got to do it.
Yeah, I agree. And baby steps don't hurt
Yeah.
either.
Yeah. Like
that's a,
when did Jordan
very well
Peterson
said.
say, you don't have to move one big boulder at a time. You can move one small rock at a time. Just do something. Like,
Yeah.
organize your sock drawer to get a start moving in a positive way. Do something.
Yep, I
It's
agree.
funny when it's funny when you surprise yourself. You're like, "Oh, I can do this." And you're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I what else could I do?" And
Well,
you
Selma would say to me, there will be people there. That probably seems off the wall to most normal people, that she'd have to coach me and it won't be
yeah,
so bad, but for somebody with a phobia, I mean, neurotypical people would say, well, did you put out your clothing the night before? Like, that's going to help somebody with a phobia be more
Right.
punctual.
Would that
Yeah.
help? Like, you're, like, preparing the day before, getting your mindset going that direction? Is that something that could help in that situation?
I think and I think if you just don't overthink it, I think
Yeah.
sometimes
Right.
people stymie. If I had thought of this book undergoing 20 editorial rounds, I don't
Wow.
think that I would have approached it, but I knew it was important and there wasn't really
Yeah.
too much any out there of first person. And
Yeah.
I could write, although there may be
Yeah.
people who question, the caliber of the writing. You can tell a schizoid wrote it because it's
Uh-huh.
nonlinear and it really mirrors the way schizoids with people who have a difficulty connecting think and operate. But I think it's intelligible. I think it holds together. At least I
Oh,
got to
sure.
promote the songs I loved, and it's a kind of
Yeah.
time capsule.
And
And
if
you're
it
going to
helps
help
one person,
somebody.
if it
Yeah.
helps one person, it's worth it.
Exactly. I always feel that way.
So that's another key thing I notice with survivors is they take what's happened to them and they turn it into something positive for the next person. And a lot of the times, like people think, "Oh, what an amazing person! They were just able to do that." But as far as I know, and I think you could speak to this, it's a daily choice. I can either choose to not do this, or I can do something that I believe is important to do. So it's like having on a daily basis to pick that, no, this is important. This could help somebody over your own personal comfort sometimes. And it's amazing when someone can get to that point. Do you know what I'm talking about? Could you speak to
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I do. It's a very unzoid like thing that I did. Because for people who never open up to other people, this is almost like
Right.
a tell all kind of
Right.
book.
Yeah.
So, but I have to look at the big picture because this is just going to keep going on.
Yeah.
Lives are continually, these people are going to continue to suffer. Parents will be burdened. It costs society and homelessness wherever this happens. So, on
Hmm.
all levels, they're in a lot of pain, and I'm just trying to crack the case. I did my bit.
Yeah.
Um, and I had to put my ego or my chagrin or what my family would think aside. It wasn't meant as a vilification. But if I sugarcoat things, no, it's not going to be instructive either.
Yeah.
Right.
If
You
a
got to
parent
tell the
goes to
truth.
work on a child, the child may not be able to work. It's that
Hmm.
simple. How you're made to feel, and if you're never made to feel loved, it will taint absolutely everything. You'll never feel
Yeah.
good about yourself. It's always going to be there because a child will take responsibility for something that really had nothing to do with them. Why don't daddy and mommy love me? Why don't they
Hmm.
ever hug me? My mother never said I loved you. I mean, that
Hmm.
stayed with me. I was just suited for manual labor. And let's face it, I'm not.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
uh, I'm not a
Yeah.
mental deficient by any. So I love words. I'm a writer, but words can be used creatively and inspiringly. Ugh, mess that up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they can also be used very cruelly and leave
Hmm.
Yeah.
lifelong scars. So you have to
Yeah.
consider there are people who are more normal than I am who will recount that somebody said this or that in childhood and it's
Hmm.
still hurtful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It matters
Yeah.
a lot more than we want it to, I think. Because I
Yeah.
think a lot of times we can just take situations and be like, ah, that didn't matter. You know what I mean? And tuck them away. What I found out after I got hurt, being shot, those bad things, they all were still there and they started popping up when I was going through some other stuff. And it
Yeah.
was really kind of confusing because I didn't want to deal with the old stuff, but I had to get through the new stuff. And, a lot of times you don't want to talk about those things. And I didn't for a very long time, a couple of years. And I was like, finally, I walked in my therapist. I'm like, does this matter? And she's like, yeah, it really does matter. I'm glad you told me. And then we kind of were able to process it. And although it was the scariest thing I've ever done, because I held that secret since I was like 5 years old, it was one of the most relieving things I've ever done.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen like that either. I mean, yes, it was relieving to get it off my chest. But I was like, scared as it was coming out as a grown man, scared. Um,
Yeah.
but by getting it out and going through the work and processing it, like it turns out, I just keep following the trail and how much that memory mattered to everything that happened in the future. You know what I mean? How I saw myself, what I thought I needed to do to prove myself to be a good boy, like all these kinds of things. And they really matter. And I know that people are out there and they're struggling with them and they think it doesn't matter or it wasn't as severe as somebody else. So I'm not allowed to, think that it matters to me or that
Yeah.
it's
Well,
affecting me. But every single person out there listening, if it happened, it matters. It doesn't have to. Do not compare it to someone else's trauma.
yeah.
It's a situation you went through, and maybe you just need to review it and take a look at it with some fresh eyes or whatever it may be. But you're not alone. You are not alone. And we're doing our best every week to just bring people on and share their bits and pieces. So anyone listening out there right now feels empowered and knows that they can use the tools that Blair just shared and the courage that Blair demonstrates. And before we let you go, Blair, tell us about the book and where people can get it. Where can people get your stuff?
You can get a Schizoid at Smith's through Amazon, through Atmosphere Press, Thrift Books. There are a number of links. You can communicate with me on Rocking Tributes. I mentioned the template. That's my gift with purchase, because everybody has a story and a soundtrack of their life.
Yeah.
And I hope that you enjoy it. I hope it helps you. It's funny to me because so many people relate to it, feeling isolated. Certainly not to the extent that schizoids do.
Right.
Feeling alienated, feeling like they're only performing in public and not
Mm,
being their true selves.
yeah.
It's surprising how much relatability people seem to find. So I
Yeah.
hope it just helps or you enjoy it and
Well,
that you will feel.
absolutely.
I'll look it up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
definitely will. I'll buy it and read it. I'm curious to find out some of your favorite bands were. I'm not going to ask you because I don't want you to spoil the book. But
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
I will make sure I post all of Blair's information. Again, where you can get the book, the name of the book, all that good stuff, how to get a hold of Blair, all that stuff. And again, Blair, I just want to thank you again for having the courage, which
yes,
today was a demonstration of courage to come on here and talk about it. Like that's
Thank you so much.
amazing. And I know that you helped somebody today and you blessed us so much.
absolutely.
So if we can ever do anything for you, Blair, you let us know. Thank you
Thank you.
so much. That was a powerful conversation. Thank you to Blair Sorrel for sharing her courageous journey of living with SPD, trauma, and finding the tools for recovery. If her journey helped you, please show your support by 1, hit the like button, 2, subscribe to the channel, 3, share the video with someone who needs it. And remember, compassion is key to breaking cycles of pain. Until next time, keep paddling forward, survivor.